Okay, so if you're watching this video, you're probably wondering, the 3070, is it better than its competitors? Should you buy it? Is the price point good for the value of money? Let's find out. Alrighty, so I put together a list of all of the cards currently in this 30 series for you to take a look at the differences and similarities between the cards. Alrighty, so now that we have the program all launched up here, I do have a spreadsheet of the differences between the 5 cards. So as far as CUDA cores go, you guys can see here that the RTX 3060 has only 3,584 cores, getting a little bit better on the TI with 4,864 cores. And then on the 3070, we're looking at 5,888 cores. Now on the 3080, you have 8,704 cores, and then the 3090 has 10,496 cores. And then as far as the boost clock, the 3060 has 1.78 gigahertz, whereas the 3060 Ti has 1.67 gigahertz, and the 3070 has 1.73 gigahertz, down to 1.70 gigahertz on the 3090. Now on the memory aspect for the GDDR6, we have 12 gigabytes down to 8 gigabytes on the 3070. So the 3060 has 12, and then the 3070 only has 8 gigabytes of GDDR6. And then up to 24 gigabytes on the 3090, and this isn't GDDR6 anymore, it's GDDR6X. As far as the TGP goes, total graphics power, we have 170 watts on the 3060, 220 watts on the 3070, and 350 watts on the 3090. Now the price difference between these models, as you guys can see here, the 3060 is only 330 USD, the 3070 is 500 USD, and then the 3090 is 1500. The other thing I think is pretty cool that's not actually in the current spreadsheet I just showed you guys is actually the new Nvidia broadcast, which is really cool if you're a streamer or you're trying to get into it, because what Nvidia broadcast actually does is it allows you to stream pretty much live from your computer. Okay, so I've said this in most of my videos already. Along with the graphics card, you're gonna wanna have a decent processor and a decent amount of RAM. Check out my other video if you guys are stuck between AMD or Intel processor. It's linked down below. But more importantly, if you have a good amount of RAM, a good processor, you'll have a good gaming experience. One thing to note though is I have seen this card compared to the 2070 on some people's sites. And one thing that they have been saying is the 2070 actually has been outperforming on a handful of games, where the 3070 does outperform the 2070 on most of the games. Compared to the 2070, this card has 46 multi-processors spread out over 5,888 CUDA cores. The 2070 only had 2,334 CUDA cores spread out over 36 multi-processing units. But it wouldn't be a card review without some user benchmarks. So let's take a look at those now. All right, so now that I've run a benchmark here on the 3070, it scored within between 154 percentile, 10th of 658. So that's not one of the greater cards I've had on my channel so far, but it didn't score poor, and it didn't score quite great. It scored between average, which it shows like some of the weaknesses here. So like the average dynamic range lighting, 208 FPS, and then average parallel occlusion mapping stones, 196 FPS. It did average 53.5% higher than the peak scores, which is good. And you guys can just kind of see some of this right here, some of like the lighting FPS. I think one of the downfalls of this card is that 8 GB memory cap. And as we're just scrolling through, you can see here that it did score average, but it is not the greatest. Okay, so we got done with the spreadsheet there with the general information about the card and how it compares to other cards, as well as the actual bench test, I guess you could say. And my overall thoughts on this card, good and bad, are that, you know, like on the good side, we have the card is a very quiet card. It's very small, compact, easy to fit in, and it does support 4K. On the bad side, you know, we have this stupid 12-pin connector for this kind of a card, only at an 8 GB card. It's a design flaw for sure, because we have other 8 GB cards on the market that no problem have no pin connector. And I don't know how much experience you guys have with building PCs, but one of the worst things about building PCs is actually getting that pin connector in, especially if you have fans and liquid cooling and you have all these other cables that intersect with that. So I don't like the 12-pin connector part at all. It is a major flaw in this card's design. The other bad thing about this card is if you guys are looking at the 3060 series and the 3060 Ti, you see that they easily fit 12 gigabytes of GDDR in this computer, in this card, I should say, for less money, and this card only has 8. So in conclusion, I do think that this card is a buy. I wasn't overly thrilled with the 12-pin power connector, as it does make cable management a little bit tricky, but overall, I was pretty impressed with the performance of this card, and I would suggest to anyone looking in that $500 range that yes, they should maybe consider this card. But at the end of the day, the two things I think Nvidia could have improved on the most are the 12-pin power connector, as well as the only having 8 gigs of RAM. After hearing what I said about this card today, doesn't pique your interest quite in the 3070 and you're still stuck on either the 3080 or the 3090, I do have a video down below of my review of the two cards and which one I think is better. Guys, that again concludes our video. As always, if you like our content, please give us a thumbs up down below, subscribe for more, and for the next 2 weeks, every 2 days, I will be posting new content. Thanks again for coming. I'll see you next time.